Hi, this is Richard Chamberlain. Welcome back to the Protecting Your Family's Future podcast. This is episode number 108. Today, we're going to be talking about who you should choose as the successor trustees in your trust. So, just by way of background, in a trust, there are three parties involved. There's the trust maker, and that's the person who makes the trust and decides what the trust is going to say and do. There's the trustee, and that, of course, is the person who manages the assets that are owned by the trust. They follow the instructions that the trust maker provided in the trust document on how those assets are to be managed. And then the beneficiaries are the people that the trust is for the benefit of. So when you create your revocable living trust, you will be the initial trustee. You're going to appoint yourself as the person in charge of the assets. But if you can't be the trustee anymore, who should you choose as the person who would take over the management of those assets? Either for you, if you are incapacitated, or for your next beneficiaries once you've passed away. That's what we're going to talk about today. So, when we are talking about choosing successor trustees, who you choose is going to depend a lot on how the trust is going to be designed for your beneficiaries. If you are simply having the assets being distributed outright to your adult beneficiaries, your children, for example, then you might have one or more of your children serving as the trustees of the trust to take over the management. Once you've passed away, they then take control of the assets, sell what needs to be sold, and then distribute the assets to themselves, and everything is done. And it's pretty straightforward. Now, that's assuming, of course, that your children or one of your children would be a suitable person to take over that role. Your trustees need to be responsible. They need to be trustworthy. They need to be organized because there can be a lot of paperwork involved in managing a trust. There's, of course, if they're managing your assets, especially if there are other beneficiaries involved, they need to be trustworthy. You need to know that they're going to follow the instructions in the trust. They're not going to treat one beneficiary less fairly than they might treat other beneficiaries, like themselves, for example. So, honest, trustworthy, organized, responsible, all of these things are important character qualities that any trustee needs to have. But if you, as I said, if you're doing an outright distribution to your beneficiaries, then maybe having one of your beneficiaries be the trustee is perfectly fine. You might have more than one of them serve as co-trustees, which can have the benefit of giving them some additional help. So all of the responsibility doesn't fall on one person. It also gives a little bit of accountability. There's more than one person involved. There's better communication about what's happening, who's doing what, not questions about, gosh, I haven't heard from this person. I don't know what they're doing. Are they acting appropriately? Because now we have two people who are kind of doing it together and looking over each other's shoulders for the benefit of all the beneficiaries. So that's if you have family members who could serve in that role and it would be appropriate for them. Now, there might be times when you might not be able to have your children serve as trustees of your trust. And that might be a situation where you have beneficiaries, your children are either minors or they're incapacitated and they're not capable of managing their own property and financial affairs. They might have creditor problems or addictions. There just might be reasons why you would not want them to have access and control of the assets that are going to them in trust. So, in those cases, you would want to have a third party serving as the trustee. So, who can you choose there? Well, you might choose other family members. You might have, if you have younger children as your potential beneficiaries. You might have your siblings or other trusted family members serving as the trustee over those shares for those beneficiaries. You might have a professional trustee serve as the trustee over those shares for those beneficiaries, especially if you've got a trust that can continue for a long time, maybe over the lifetime of a beneficiary who won't be able to manage their own assets. So, having a professional trustee in that situation allows for some continuity of who's going to be in charge over time. If a trust share is going to be very complex in its administration, like with a supplemental needs trust, then having a professional trustee can be a very good idea because those trusts can be very complicated in how they're administered. There are specific rules to be followed, what assets can be distributed for what purposes. And if things are done incorrectly, it could really mess up things for the beneficiary in terms of what benefits they're receiving through government programs. So having those administered correctly is critical, and maybe a professional trustee is the best idea in those circumstances. So what it all boils down to is who you choose as the trustee in your trust will really depend on your personal circumstances. What do you want this trust to do? What do you need this trust to do? Will it be ongoing, or will it be terminating very soon after you pass away? Will your beneficiaries be able to handle these things on their own, or do you need to have somebody else manage assets for them, either for a short or a relatively short time or indefinitely? So all of those uh, aspects come into play, and your answer to those questions will determine who's going to be the ideal choice for you. So it's a good idea, of course, when you're meeting with your estate planning attorney to talk through those issues and find the right person or people who can serve for you in those roles. So if you have any questions about setting up your own estate plan, feel free to reach out to us if you're in Ohio or in Michigan. Our contact information is in the show notes. I hope that's helpful for you today, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks.